Good evening, Critverse, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Critical Conversations. Twitch's most popular live stream in all of internet history, no doubt.
Definitely.
This is a show, guys, if you haven't managed to catch one of the previous episodes of Critical Conversations, where I just get to sit down and talk about D&D with some of my best friends in the world. How are you tonight, guys?
Yeah, good, man.
Good.
Yeah, very good.
Good?
Oh, well.
Good. What we just got finished listening to there with the starting soon scene, which you were watching just a moment ago, is a song called the Baron of Phrygia. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yes.
Mark? Yes. Because why am I asking you that? Why am I asking you if I'm pronouncing that right, Mark?
Oh, because it's my song.
Exactly, because it's Mark's song. So I think he deserves a round of applause there, guys. Don't you think?
Thank you.
As I've already introduced, the wonderful Mark Hillman, the struggling artist, as it were, of the group, and he has his own Twitch channel as well. That is is it Mark Hillman Music?
Yeah, it is.
TV /
whatever the
Twitch or
thing
whatever
is.
it is. It's up
Yep.
on the screen right there, guys. Check it out. He's got a lot of stuff coming up. You have an album coming out next year, if I'm right.
Yeah, I've been working on it for a little while. I've been working on it for ages actually, but I've got like 8 to 12 tracks maybe. I was going to release it this year, but I'm heading up to Cairns in the later part of the year, and I'm going to have access to like a top-notch studio, so I'm going to probably retake it all, and redo it with all the good gear rather than in my bedroom.
There you go, guys. You got the spoilers for a debut album coming out next year. If you want to hear more music like that, you're gonna have to tune in for more Critical Conversations. Maybe I'll run another track next month for the next episode. Who knows? Mark, of course, is one of my players for our Out of the Abyss campaign, which debuted last week, I think it was, on Friday. It was the 18th. It was the 18th of March.
Yes, it was a Friday night.
Went live. We had a bit of technical difficulties, but that was not a problem because I have the best players in the world, one of which is this guy over here, and one of which is Grace, the person to my right. I want to say, is that to my right? Depends on which way you're looking at it. Who, of course, plays Thrash the Troublesome, who has, in the very first episode of Out of the Abyss, already lived up to her name. How are you, Grace?
Good. Very good. Look, I was under the impression that fight was going to be a lot easier and I was just going to roll 20s. I did not roll 20s. Mistakes were made. And I have re-rolled a backup character that I'm sure is going to bring lots of trouble and lots of upheaval, just in case Thrash meets her untimely demise, which I really hope she doesn't. Thank you, Sven.
Well, I mean, I've been accused of being a pretty harsh DM. I'm still undecided about how harsh do I want to be. Maybe we'll get Thrash the Troublesome back, missing an arm or a leg or an eye or something like that. I'm not gonna be that easy where I'm just gonna give you a brand new character. No, that's not how this works. There's gonna be consequences.
Fair enough.
There's always.
I mean, make her lose an eye. That would be so badass.
There's always.
I don't know if we're picking limbs.
But like disadvantage on all perception.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I do get advantage when I'm having insomnia, so I would just be flat roll.
Cancel. Yeah.
Exactly.
Of course, tonight we are joined by two very special guests, two of my DMs, as it were, in the past. I'm going to start with my my OG DM, Luke Archard from Big Games, Small Pieces. Hi, man. You good?
I'm good, thanks, Sven. It's been a busy week, but I found enough time to keep myself awake this late and talk some D&D.
It is difficult when you have kids, I will admit. I've got 2 kids, I work full time, staying up this late, but unfortunately that's a sacrifice that we have to make. make. If we want to play D&D, it's just what you got to do. You know that
The
better than I do.
100%.
It's the only time quiet enough to do a recording too.
Yeah, exactly. I am very lucky. I have a very supporting partner who has no idea what it is that I do, but she supports me anyway, and she looks after the kids. So I gotta, everyone, send messages of support to my partner, because the gods know that she needs it more than I do. Of course, I played in your Curse of Strahd campaign. Was that a couple of years ago now?
We've almost finished it.
It's been a while, and I was loving that campaign. Unfortunately, I was an idiot, and I took on way too many responsibilities way too quickly, and something had to give way. 2 kids, 2 jobs. I was studying as well at the time, which just made things extremely difficult. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to try my hand at DMing as well. And then I had, that expectation on me, and I was like, oh man, I just can't do this. I'm killing myself. Trying to play D&D, and I just wasn't doing the campaign justice. So I stepped aside and I let someone else step in. How is that campaign actually going? You got to be pretty near the end, end boss situation.
They're at about 63, 64th session. They're level 14-ish, I think, some of them. They're currently messing up Strahd's wedding and running around the castle, causing all sorts of problems, mischief, and just randomness. Unfortunately for them, Arena, they sent off in a portal, and she just froze to death because they left her on the mountain. So Strahd just found her, and has just come back, and he's whooping ass. That's where we currently stand.
And people say I'm a harsh DM. This guy let an NPC freeze to death on a mountain. Come on.
That was the Warlock portal. Yeah, that was...
Yeah, I know the Warlock. I know that one.
That sounds to me more like it was, the players didn't go back for him. Like, what the hell?
He pulled her to the mountain pass and in a wedding dress and left her there to throw off the wedding, and she froze. Like,
it's going to be an interesting find for someone when they're exploring the mountain ranges of a frozen woman in a wedding dress.
They couldn't pull her to a nice cozy basement or something?
No, because that's when they ran down to then disrupt the wedding and get into a big fight. Meanwhile, every skeleton, zombie, vampire has had an illusion put on them, so now everyone looks like Strahd running around the castle. They keep attacking random Strahds, and they've got no idea which one's the real one. Until now that they've finally filtered that down, they're in Sergei's tomb, fighting what was a simulacrum Strahd, and that's when the real one came back. Like, you killed her. So,
No.
That campaign will be over soon.
Yeah. I wonder
One
how
more
that one's
section, you
going.
reckon?
You can see on screen there, that is my my very first D&D character. That's Emir the Nameless with his pet spider. I can't remember what the pet spider's name was. I'm sure I got his character sheet somewhere, but I'd have to dig it up. Is he still alive?
Well, you and Genji were going to come back, but your Friday nights are busy now, so you weren't able to come back, and Genji got COVID, so he was out.
Damn it. I really did want to. Something did come up. That's unfortunate, but, schedules clash. That's what happens. Christian from Hermes D&D Services was actually supposed to be with us tonight as well. You might have seen him in Amongst Shadows of Stone, or on our previous episode of Critical Conversations. He was a guest on that one as well. Unfortunately, he was double booked, and it was the first time he was running a game at a new venue, so he had to give one up, and I think he made the right choice. He's been in an episode of Critical Conversations. This was more important for his business. So unfortunately, we're not going to see his pretty face today, but of course we still have the rest of these beautiful people to look at, except for my last guest. George, how are you, my friend?
I am darn good, thank you.
Darn good. Too darn good looking, rather, to be part of Critical Conversations. But
I know, my looks like kill.
Looks that kill. That's right. And I don't want to kill my viewers. I don't have enough.
Yeah, let alone make everyone have a saving throw. So there we go.
I can't start killing my viewers just yet because I don't have enough to kill off. But you know, you're still able to join us all the way from Magnetic Island, where you do a little bit of work. If that voice sounds familiar to anyone, that is because George is, of course, Grexis Stargazer from the Dungeonroos Wild Beyond the Witchlight campaign. Tell us about that. I want to hear about that.
Yeah, so at the moment we're on chapter 2, and we just entered the Feywild into Phrygia, and already my students, or what I perceive to be my students, I hope, bullying poor Grexis, even to the point where they're about to shave me for missing a session. And you think that the DMs are evil? Wait till you play with these players.
Yeah, players can be just as bad, if not even worse, because there's like a group mentality. There's only one DM, and there's like 4 or 5 players, maybe 6 players, depending on what campaign you're a part of, and they just gang up on us poor DMs. I don't know if you know this, but after every session, I cry myself to sleep.
You know, that's a bit like complaining about peasants ganging up on God, right?
Okay.
Yes. But I like to think we're fair and benevolent gods. The kind of gods that would break the rules for their own purposes.
Well, I mean, there are DM-less campaigns now. I was just reading a one about called Our God is Dead, where there is no DM and it is all player run. And I was like, yes, let's cut out the middleman.
I'm terrified. I'm honestly terrified.
It's so they're obviously the DM is gone, and these clerics try to perform a ritual, but the ritual doesn't work because there is no god, and so they've got to like perform all these fake rituals so that the people in their town don't think that their god is dead, the god being the DM.
You know what? That actually sounds really great. And if there's a group of players out there who want to do that, I'd be happy to live stream that for you guys. I'll sit back, have a beer, enjoy the show, and you guys can do all the work. That sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good to me. I don't know what you think about that.
How long do you think that campaign's going to run before someone tries to do a Vecna and ascend to godhood and take over as DM?
We'll see. We'll see.
If it's anything like my players, I'd give it 2 to 3 weeks before something like that at least starts to happen. So they step onto that yellow brick road, as it were.
Low key.
Now, like I said, tonight's just about 5 people sitting around talking about something that we all love in equal measure, and it is talking about D&D. Now, the way I like to do this is every time I get a new guest sign up for Critical Conversations for reasons that I haven't quite figured out yet, I get them to come up with a topic, and I just roll through those topics during the night, and we just chat about them, and we just bounce ideas off of each other and do stuff like that. So to get us started tonight, I actually want to hand it over to our guest from Big Games, Small Pieces, Luke. What was your topic tonight, man?
Well, I want to talk about creating content. I guess I've been working on a little thing for a while now. I've been trying to make some non-combat encounters, and I've been doing research into what it takes to produce and publish content. And it just so happens that just in the last day or so, they've also made the announcement of a new book coming out, The Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel. So I guess this is going to go 2-part, is to what do people know about creating content, and I guess also what do people want from a third party who's creating content.
All right, I think that's a pretty good question. Do Do you have any before we get started? Do you have any like spoilers about this content that you're writing? I'm curious. Maybe
Yeah.
little juicy piece of information.
Well, I noticed when I was running my Curse of Stride game that I wanted a random encounter. But I wanted a random encounter that wasn't just, here's something new to fight. I wanted a random encounter, though random, still had a point, a goal, a little story tied into itself for players to solve, which didn't have to be combat. Like, all things failing, it's going to go back to combat when someone just wants to kill something that night. But if someone wanted an encounter to throw into their campaign, here's a little one that you could throw into, and it doesn't. It's not designed to go combat, but it's not designed to not go combat if that's what people want to do.
It's if I'm getting the right idea here, it's like it's a combat encounter with other ways to resolve it. Is that sort of the right idea?
Could be taken along that way, but the intent is that it's not written for combat.
Yeah.
Well, here's one I've just opened up. The Devil Went Down to Faerun, in which case it's basically the Devil went down to Georgia. But a disguised devil approaches the group while they're sitting by their campfire one night. He spies the instrument that one of the characters would have and takes a fancy to it, talks about it, gets the musician in the group to talk about their instrument. So, it gets to breathe a little bit of life and role play into the character. And then it says, hey, that is mighty nice instrument you got there. I've also happened to have this one here. Care for a little wager. And little does the character know they're wagering for their soul.
One of those shiny soul coins.
Yeah, and it could potentially turn into a performance check. With potentially the character describing the style of music they want to play and roll-offs like dueling banjos. And then at the end, the result would be if you win, you get the devil's instrument, perhaps, or you get something that's going to protect you, bless you, curse you. It's up to the DM to then add in later what they want to throw in there. But I just wanted some encounters that weren't completely tied to combat. And of course,
Gotcha.
Some group is going to go, hey, you devil, we're going to kill you, and just jump up and start combat. Well, it's combat. So we're doing combat, I guess.
If you want to pull that one out, Sven, we got to do it real time. You got to like guitar battle, you versus me.
Oh,
Oh, right.
I don't trust
me
my
on
dice.
a guitar. Right on.
That would be rad.
I'll sing a little bit of Metallica for you. You do the guitar.
That's fine.
No, that's actually. Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think there's enough. At least in the official content, most random encounters are they're combat encounters. For
It's
at
a
least
table
90%.
of different things you can fight,
Yes.
almost essentially.
Yeah, essentially, yeah, you're right.
But you've produced some content, and I was interested to know, so I've written this thing up in Word. I need to take it to the next level. I need to go to some sort of a layout I need to look into. I'm potentially looking into some artwork. What did you do, Sven, for yours?
So I went a very easy route, a very cheap route. I just use Canva, which is just a online publishing sort of software. You can use it for free, and you can publish things. There's no problem with that. There's also a pro version which gives you access to a whole bunch of different tools and stuff like that you can use. But essentially, it's just it's very simple to use. It lays everything out. You can upload your own images. There's a whole bunch of different assets which you can use, and as far as I'm aware, you can use Canva, even the free version, to produce published books and stuff like that. So it might be something worth looking into. It's not exactly the most professional piece of software out there or anything like that. But for me, the main thing was I wasn't going to be publishing my book. I wasn't going to be making any money off it. So the main thing for me was it was free and it was easy to use. You guys know I'm not exactly the most technical minded person out there. So easy to use is one of the most important aspects of any software. It needs to have like an easy to use UI. The layout needs to be simple. So that's what I used for the actual layout and the publishing and stuff like that. And yeah, that's basically it. That video actually that you sent me, the one about writing content. I went and had a look at the recommendation there because he recommended looking at Dean Spencer stock art. It's fantastic.
Check them out.
Very good. If you're looking for like page filler kind of stuff, highly recommend checking that out. Your cliche archetypes, your fighters, your rogues, your archers, and all that kind of stuff. Page filler. That's all available there. If you're looking to get custom artwork made, Christian from Hermes D&D had some custom artwork made for his monsters that he's publishing in a book of his. So you might want to hit him up because it looks like a pretty good artist. But otherwise, there's just a Facebook page, which is, I think it's D&D Fantasy Art or something like that. Go on there, chuck up a message. You'll have 500 responses within 5 minutes, and you can just take your pick. So,
Cool.
Super easy.
I guess now the second bit is with the new adventure release. After I do something that's just random encounters, I'm probably thinking more about writing an adventure and going down that route. But I guess the question is, I know what's going to sell low level because everyone does low level. But what do people actually want, and what do you actually want to do in your campaign? How long is too long a campaign? How many levels are too many levels?
Well, I'm gonna pass it over to one of my players. Let's start with Grace. What would you expect in a low level random encounter?
So, I've actually been, I like live on TikTok at the moment. I saw this really cool one that's all role play, and I can't remember, it starts with a W. It's very Wind in the Willows, where instead of fighting, it's all like kindness, and you level up like just being like kind and performing kind deeds. But I love role play, and so I find it so much fun to just be able to like interact with the world around you, and like I've always really loved interesting mechanics. Like I found this super sick series of books that are diseases you can add to your D&D campaigns. So I really like seeing new and interesting things that I've never seen before. Like I found a whole disease called bloodlust, which is like based around someone's insatiable thirst for blood, and like the minute any person, NPC or PC is injured, it then becomes a goal for that character to kill them, whether they're your friend or not. And I just think that's so interesting, and is super sick. So I love seeing stuff like that in my campaigns. In terms of length, I think no campaign is too long or too short. I do like a good story, and I think the longer it goes on, like, the cooler things can happen, and, these characters, you learn to love them, and then one of them dies, and it's tragic. Like, it's like reading a good book. So, it's always really nice to see stuff that's so fleshed out. But yeah, that's me, I guess.
What level would you like to start an adventure at? Do you think 1 is where you should start, or at this point in your game experience, you want to start somewhere else?
I'm gonna be really honest. I dislike very highly starting at level 1, especially with like my character Thistle, the Moonbeam Druid. That was level 3, but as a Circle of the Shepherd Druid, she can do some really sick things as you start getting up a lot higher, and I feel like that's when characters become so awesome, especially when you've got those backstories that are like, oh yes, she led an army, she was the leader of this battalion, and she starts at level 1 and has 5 hit points.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? I think it makes so much more sense to the context of the background when you're like, she can drop a bear on someone and she's level 6. Like, I don't know.
Cool.
It's a good point. It's a point that I've struggled with as well. From now on, I don't think I'm going to start anyone off on level 1. Been there, done that. Let's jump straight to level 3 and go from there. What about George, as a DM, and you run quite a few, homebrew games and one-shots and that kind of stuff, what would you be interested in seeing in like a non-combat, sort of role play, random encounter sort of book? And what was the other question again, Luke? What levels?
Let's say I go out and write a whole campaign. Where do you want to start and what do you want to do in it?
Yeah, righto.
What's your idea of a good campaign? Where does it start and what do you get to do? Do you get to ride dragons? Is that something you want to do?
That would be sick. Okay, so I'd say with the content side of things on creating content, I'd say that that's sort of a two-factor thing with the player and the DM. As the DM, obviously you're the god of making this story work. However, you generally have a point A to a point B. Whatever happens in between is, well, that's up to the player. And hopefully it doesn't result to a TPK. But one thing that I've seen, and sometimes it gets a little bit pushed under the rug, is the ingenuity of the player and their ability to essentially make the content for you. I have the luxury of running all these one-shots, and I can tell you the same one-shot I've run maybe 4 times, everything's different. And then the interaction with the same NPCs, and I decide, oh, you know what, he's not going to be the nice guy, he's going to be the bad guy, or he's going to be something else. He'll help him or whatever. But I think it's just it's a shared responsibility. In terms of actually writing the content, I'm not much of a writer, but I'm a very good improviser, so at least some people who I hope can attest to this when they make me think on the spot. I've only probably looked at a duel for about 10 minutes before playing. Very bad DM move, but luckily with that improvisation and that player sort of relationship, it does come in to make some beautiful moments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, you keep going.
Oh yeah, and I was going to say, and the ideal probably adventure for me, because I love RP. I just love it to death. I'll be. I don't care if I'm riding dragons or if I'm Grexis stuck in the Fey room getting bullied by my students, or even being Mikio Rook when I played in my friend's Avernus campaign. It's all a different story and it's all a grand adventure.
Cool.
Yeah. And lastly, Mark, your thoughts?
Yeah, like, so with the content thing, I think that's a great approach, like the trying to create encounters that are non-combat. Like, I love that. You know, they can go to combat. Everything can go to combat if a player wants to pull out a weapon and have a crack at someone, you know. But if you're presenting these ways to move through the world and creating RP opportunities that are designed to be thought about, talked out, you know, like worked out with whatever other abilities the players might have. Like, I think that makes some of the best stories. It makes when you do end up in combat sort of more meaningful. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, it gives you that sort of like, well, this really has to be a fight now. You know, so it's more of a, you know, more of a thing like that, I think. I'm actually like working on a little world at the moment, and it's kind of designed that everywhere you come across someone, whether it's a monster or a person, there's some other way out of it than fighting it. Yeah. You know, it could be a dragon, or it could be a pack of goblins or something, but there'll be a way through. You know, if you think about what's going on in the but the milestone experience thing, like being able to combine that with it gives you sort of like this ability to then more easily reward players for taking that route rather than having to try and kill things to get experience, you know. I think that's pretty cool. Campaign wise, like, I think it really depends. If newer players, I think you should definitely start them off level 1 so they can learn mechanics and stuff, but once you've played a couple of games, maybe like 3rd level or something, but long campaigns for sure. You know, like ones I played with friends, like DM and playing, was You know, we had two over the years we were in high school together. One that I ran, one that a mate ran, and we didn't even have content like that. We used rules out of the book. This was third ed back then. But all of our settings were just made up on the spot. Like we did the generic, all right, you're in a tavern, cool, we pick up a quest, we're going to go and do it. And when I was DM, I literally just had a laptop in front of me and random generators. You know, so I'm just like, all right, we're going off to a cave, cool, generate a cave. All right, what monsters are in the cave? What treasure are you going to find? And then just let the players make the story as it went. You know, that was kind of cool. But I think in a written sort of campaign setting, you can do whatever. Just, you know, the players and the DM together, like, you know, the others were saying, are going to make that story. But yeah, I think the lengthwise, like, man, I've never been to level 20. I'd really like to. So the longer, the better, really.
That's what I was thinking. Like level 5 to 15 is really missed. You pick right up from Lost Mines or Dragon of Icespire, and you continue from there into this campaign that's missing.
Yeah, I from my experience, from what I've heard from people online and talking to people, is the general consensus is, at least for, you know, adult players, they don't like to really start at level 1. And I've found sort of a similar thing, whether you're running a one-shot or whether you're doing a longer campaign, is level 1 becomes a little bit redundant, because, you know, you're so squishy. You can only really throw very uninteresting encounters at them, and you can actually lose the attention of your players early on. So general consensus, I would say, you know, people like to start at level 3, level 4. I'd say maybe level 3 if you want to go low, level 5 if you want to go a little bit higher and pick it up from there and continue on from there. Just because level 3 is good, because of course level 4 you get your stat increase or your feat, and
at 3 years.
Yeah.
Sorry, at 3 you're starting with your subclass then, aren't you? Like you pick your subclasses at level 3, so you know you're getting a bit more. Yeah, you're getting a bit more flavor of the character that you're actually playing or ready to go.
A bit more character
Yeah, I so
flavor,
agree.
adds to combat, but also adds heavily to role playing, which at the moment, you know, role playing is king. RP is king these days. Combat is not really that important. So what you're talking about, random encounters with more of an emphasis on role play, that's what people are really looking for, and you can't really do that much at level 1. It's just, you know, I mean you can, but when it comes to, you know, tense situations, dangerous situations, you can only really throw goblins at them. You know what I mean, or kobolds or something like that, and they don't really have that much role play built into them. Not like, you know, some of the bigger bads that you get when you're a little bit higher level. So yeah, I'd say
right.
level 3, level 5.
Yeah, I agree, because you're just starting to get to know them. Really, it's like it's like a new friend. Like, you know, I guess I've been playing Thistle for a really long time, so I knew Thistle really well, but Thrash, I'm still getting to know Thrash, and like, you know, it takes you a while to ponder over the intricacies of some of these people, and I think roleplay is such a good way to do that, because you get to like expand a little bit on who they are and their motives and like why they do the things they do. Yeah.
And if there's anyone, you know, watching this back on YouTube or listening on Spotify later on, and you have you want to chip in to the conversation, feel free to either shoot us a message on Facebook at Crit and Miss, and I can pass it on to Luke, or just head over to their Facebook page and shoot them a message, because I know as a DM, especially as if you're writing or making content, nothing is more important than getting honest and open feedback. It's extremely difficult to get honest and open feedback, because people, especially in the D&D community, very lovely people, and they don't want to make you upset. So if you have any suggestions about what you would like to see in a campaign, you know, what level you want to start at, what kind of role playing encounters, what's your Facebook, Luke?
It's currently big game, small pieces, but as I've researched more and more into open game license, I'm probably going to have to make some slight adjustments, but we'll stick with that for now.
All right,
On
stick with that for
Facebook,
now.
big game, small pieces.
Big game, small pieces. You can find them on Facebook. You can find them on YouTube. You can find them. Where else can we find you?
I think that's all the mediums at the moment. Once again, I need to learn how to shout out a little louder.
All right. So yeah, I mean, you can find them in those places, and if you're having trouble, send me a message and I'll pass it on to Luke. No problem at all. And let's get as much input as we can. You know, extremely important. Input. So hard to get that data as a content creator. So you know, please do. And actually, while we're talking about Grace, you were saying you know you've played as Thistle, the Druid, what subclass was it again? Sorry.
She is a druid, yeah.
Moon, Circle of the Moon.
Shepherd.
Circle of the Shepherd. There we go. Circle of the Shepherd. You've played as that character.
No, she's the Moonbeam Druid.
Yeah, exactly. Moonbeam druid.
Moonbeam Druid. Moon Druid. Yeah, the self-nuking Druid. That
always
gets her life back with a point of inspiration that I should never have given them in the first place.
I'm sorry.
It's not your fault. It was a really good. You know, you would have gotten a point of inspiration for that roleplay anyway. Like you said, roleplay is the most.
Look, always trust the note taker of the campaign to keep track of those things.
Well, that's it. You've just officially attributed yourself as the note taker of the campaign. So if I ever forget something, I am going to be looking to you now.
Look, feel free. In my last campaign, I was playing something very similar to Curse of Strahd, and we were fighting a werewolf, and we killed it, and my notes were, he dead though. He do be fluffy. We were attacked by a big fluffy big guy.
All right.
Oh, he has teeth. Oh, I die.
I retract my former statement. Mark.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
You're on. You're on note taking. You're on music and note taking and Facebook.
Yes.
Facebook posts. Like I said, you played that character for quite a while. You already knew them, which is a perfect segue. I'm going to mix things up to my topic, which is about character creation. And, you know, how people create their characters and in what order. So I can't remember where I heard it or where I read it, because it was a while ago now. But there was a bit of a sound-off, a bit of a debate about how you should create characters. And I know my opinion on this, but I just wanted to get everyone else's opinion. I want to know, do you create the character's mechanics, the stats, you know, race, class, background, all that kind of stuff first, and then do you build a background and a story around that character, or do you first come up with the flavor text, you know, the background and the backstory and all that kind of stuff, and then build the mechanics around that that story or that, you know, personality? To start us off, let's go with, let's just go across the table. Mark, what do you do when you're building a character?
Kind of depends, I guess. Like, oops, there's a bit of reverb there. Like with my backup character, for instance, he was all race, class, stats. I haven't even written a proper backstory for him yet. You know, I've got a basic idea of what he's going to be based on what I chose as his race. He's a bugbear. And sort of what he does. Bugbear rogue with plans to multi-class into barbarian, by the way. He's a bit nasty, but you know, that was him. Serathor was a bit different. I picked his race and class first, but then I sort of, to be kind to myself, I gave him a personality sort of similar to characters I've played in the past, but I've never played a paladin. So I've never played like that personality in that role before. So it was kind of like, you know, I grabbed that idea once I chose the race and class. And then one thing I knew is that I don't know the Faerun world that well, so I didn't want to be role-playing a character where I had to know a lot about a particular deity. So this is why I've homebrewed that little kind of, you know, background story for him out of the Far Traveler background. So, you know, I guess it's like I've taken the stuff that I've chosen at the start and developed stuff off that, but I haven't gone too hard into what kind of paladin he's going to be until I've developed the rest of the story, you know, like he's going to be an Order of the Watchers, I think, paladin, or Oath of the Watchers, sorry, which that came about from looking at, you know, the story that I developed for him, and the people that he was going to be worshipping, and what they would have him do rather than it being a mechanical choice, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but the way that I'm hearing it is you're starting off with mechanical a little bit,
Yep.
then you're going personality, and then you're
Yep.
bouncing off that personality to fill in the gaps.
Yes, exactly.
Sounds sort of right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's go on to the Queen of RP, Grace. How do you make a character? Personality or stats first?
Well, I guess Thistle was my first D&D character, so she was actually based really heavily off me. And I was like, if I could roll myself into a tiny little Faerun thing and, like, you know, Michael Jordan it into a character sheet, like, what would I do? But I also wanted to do, like, the classic make it an elf, make it a druid sort of vibe. Thrash was really different though. I was scrolling through Pinterest, as I usually am when I'm trying to procrastinate, and I found this photo of this tabaxi party, like this drawing, and I was like, oh my god! Like, and this was the day after Sven messaged me and was like, hey, you want to be part of this campaign? And I saw this photo and I was like, that is my character. And I just built this whole character and this whole backstory off this one photo. So I sort of did it a little bit flip-floppy compared to everyone else, but she was very backstory heavy. I sort of wrote a backstory and I'm like, right, that's the vibe we're going with, and then threw everything into else after it, I guess.
I get the feeling. So you saw this picture, I feel like you got a hint of a personality off of this photo of your character portrait. And then we're like,
100%.
I'm going to build. I think. Correct me. How do you guys feel about this? I feel like that's personality first, then mechanics around it. Does everyone else agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely a personality.
All right, sweet. That's good to know. Luke, have you been able? First of all, have you been able to play very much of late?
Occasionally my friend runs a game when he's free on a Wednesday night, but it's mostly me running my Descent Avernus. But as soon as I can knock over this Curse of Strahd one, I'm told I'll be a player, so fingers crossed.
I'll be definitely keeping up to date with that. Make sure you're chucking in like updates on your Facebook, and I want to see what kind of character you create. And when you do create that character, what is your go-to method? Do you have a go-to method, or is it different every time?
Yeah, I can definitely say it's evolved. When I first started, my first character was a human druid, and I was just like, "This is me as a druid," and it was
running.
And that's when you become a little emotionally tied to the character when things don't go exactly the way you want it to happen, because it's me. I'm not playing a role. This is me. And then after that, as I wanted to try all the classes, it became more about, I want to try this, I want to try this, I want to try this, and then I'll build something around that. But then more and more lately, I guess, especially in the last one, was it's about nowadays I come up with a character concept and then I struggle to find out, what class would this actually be? And now I'm actually having trouble picking the class this character concept would fall under. Like one I was planning on was quite literally a mother. She was going out to find her son and bring him home because he's been away and he's been a very naughty boy and he's got to come home now. And
I love that.
He's not the Messiah.
And she was going to go around and sit on a hanky and clean people's faces after combats, and she was going to cook and make people wash their socks and do things like that. And I'm like, what class could this even be? How do I bring this into combat? And then I decided barbarian. She's going to have a hell of a rage and just lose her shit as a mother can, come into battle, fighting and swinging like a frying pan or anything that you found sort of thing. So
I love this. I love this.
Great.
Mum rage. I love it.
Not gonna lie, that sounds
It has
exactly like
evolved.
something I've done in the past as well. But we'll touch on that later. But I think that definitely falls into the personality first, mechanics later sort of pool.
I got there eventually.
Yeah, I that's what I gather from that is you come up with the personality and then you can't even think how the mechanics are gonna work. You've sort of gotta make it work, as it were. I could think of a couple ways that character could work, but I think I was actually leaning towards Barbarian as well. That's what I was going to suggest.
Definitely Barb.
And lastly, George, you've been struggling to play as well, but then you joined the Dungeonroos. You made Grexis. How did that come about?
With Grexis, it was 100% all personality. All my characters are 100% personality. And I guess this kind of leads on to why Session 0 is completely important, because especially with Grexis, I said to Royce that I wanted him to be a school teacher, that he was a retired adventurer, and he goes, "Up, mate, look, this is level 1. I was like, "Yeah, no, look, we can work something out." And so we discussed and made more discussions about it, about what he can do and what he can't do, what he knows, what he doesn't know. And honestly, it works well.
Yeah, I gotta agree. It's a very fun character. I love I love that character. What can I say? It's an awesome character. The voice is fantastic. The roleplay is fantastic. Of course, it's a roleplay heavy campaign. It's the same true with other campaigns that have been more combat oriented, in which you may have taken
Well,
part of.
yeah, okay. So I too have played Avernus. I played a drunken master monk called Mickey O'Rook, which I talked to the DM as well, again, Session 0. I said, "Hey, look, I understand the mechanics behind the key component of Drunken Master, but I want my key to come from a flask." And he goes, "Oh, what?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want my key to come from a flask." And he goes, "Well, okay." So every time I use my key, because he was very Irish and he was very much like Brad Pitt from Snatch, if you have seen that movie.
Yep.
That Degs?
And yeah, absolutely. And no one understood him. I put 100% personality in, but because I knew what I wanted and I knew what Brad Pitt was like in Snatch, it kind of just meshed really well. It's just that nice collision between mechanics and personality.
And let me guess, he wanted everything in Periwinkle Bleu.
I actually watched Snatch last night, so this is actually really funny.
Love that movie. It's been a while since I watched it. Did you know Jason Statham got that movie, got the part for that movie because he tried to sell stolen goods, or like who was hawking goods on the street, and the director Guy Ritchie saw him. He's like, "That guy looks great. I want him in my movie."
I'm pretty sure that was Lockstock, Two Smoking Barrels.
Yeah, that's right. I get the two mixed up.
Yeah. No, but the only reason I really wanted to play a Drunken Master Monk like Mickey from Snatch was because nobody could bloody understand him, and every time I made a charisma check, it was just the best goddamn thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I'd say at least disadvantage on all charisma checks. I'd say.
Oh, absolutely. But even when you passed, the DM was just like, my NPC doesn't understand it, but he'll just agree to it.
I gotta say, just weighing things up, I think we've got 4 people on the, 3 people on the personality and then mechanics. We have Mark. I think he was leaning a little bit more towards the mechanics and then the personality, but it was a little bit of a mixed bag. It was like mechanics, personality, mechanics type of thing, like a back and forth. Yep. I sit heavily in the personality first and then mechanics sort of side of the fence in this particular debate, as it were, because I agree with the rest of you, pretty much what you said. Role play is king. When it comes down to it, combat is rolling dice and doing mathematics. but role play opens up like this this sort of whole new dimension of gameplay. That's when the really interesting things are going to happen. So when I design my characters, always personality first. I was part of a one-shot which Tom ran a couple of weeks ago. Tom, who of course was with us for the previous episode of Critical Conversations. It was his first time DMing, so I thought, put a stick in the spoke of his bike, as it were, to watch him fly over the seat head first. I made a character. I was like, what's this character gonna be like first? Actually, I came up with the voice first. And I was like, what class would work with this voice? And I worked from there. It was personality first, then mechanics, and I do the same thing. Luke, what you said earlier about a mother going out to find her son. Remember that one shot that we were both a part of, that one of the players ran? I can't remember his name. God, the big beard even better than my beard.
Gareth,
yes, that's the one. I remember he had like a really D&D name, so I was like, how can I forget that? And he ran a one shot, and I made Grigelda.
Mm-hmm.
Almost exactly the same thing. I was like, I want to play this woman whose husband like disappeared on their wedding day, and she's gone out to go find them, and she basically ripped the larder door off the kitchen and grabbed a meat tenderizer and head out the door and went looking for him. That was almost exactly the same thing, and I was like, what class is this character? And I was like,
yeah,
barbarian for sure. Angry wife left on the aisle of her wedding day. Yeah, that's going to be a barbarian. And still, one of my favorite characters that I've played. I think that pretty much wraps up that topic. We are going to go for a short break because I've had a lot of beers and, nature calls, as it were. We'll be back again 5 minutes time or something like that. So if you're watching live, guys, please stick with us. If you're watching this on YouTube or Spotify, the break, of course, is going to be a lot shorter. But in the meantime, enjoy the Baron of Phrygia.
Hey,
Again. And we're back. We're live. We're back from our short break, guys. We've done all the things that we needed to do, and now we're back to talk a little bit more D&D. While we were away, I've done a little poll of my fellow guests here, and we were talking a little bit about our next topic, which is going to be underused or underappreciated subclass. So I've asked my players, what do you think is the most popular class, not even subclass, just the most popular class, from a poll that was taken back in, I think it was 2020, and we'll have a quick look at the results of that one. just switch over to that one so you can all see a little bit better. No, that's not it. Oh, it hasn't worked. All right, we'll go back again. I'll just tell you what it is. It is, in fact, Fighter. Fighter was the most popular class, which is what... George, you guessed Fighter. Why?
Yay!
Why Fighter?
Well, the way, and I'm guilty of it because that was my first ever class of when I started playing D&D. Whenever I see a fighter, I just want to go, yes, I want to be glorious, slay monsters, and fight for the realm. That's generally what I see in newer players as well, and it's kind of a nice reflection, to be honest, of the past.
Oh, sorry, just oh, there we go. Everything's back to normal. I just had a bit of a glitch there. You know what? I think it comes down to, for new time players, like or first time players, new players. I think they grab one of these books from over here. They grab the player's handbook and they start flipping through it. A lot of people are very excited, so they'll look at all the classes and they'll read maybe Wizard, you know, Druid, something like that. Spellcasters are a lot of fun, and they see all the mechanics involved with it, and they go, no, okay, this is my first time playing. I want to play something easy, so they'll play Fighter. I think that's the reason. Like I'm just guessing, but I think that's the reason
I think that's
Fighter
fair.
is the most popular class, because people think that Fighter is the simplest. All you have to do is remember to walk up and hit the thing with the sharp pointy thing that you have in your hand, and that's the end of it. Experienced players know otherwise. You know, Fighter can be just as complex as any other character depending on how you want to play it. So this is actually the topic that Grace brought to the table. I think it's a very interesting topic. So I'm actually going to hand it over to you, Grace, to take it from there.
Sweet. Well, I guess this topic sort of came up for me when I first started playing. As I said, Thistle was my first character, and I remember having a little bit of Circle of the Moon envy when I found out I could only wild shape up into a certain level, and I looked at a ranking system, and turns out Circle of the Shepherd is one of the most underrated druid classes, and it's only a B, so sorry, it's an A class as opposed to an S class. I guess fighting type, because moon druids can just do so much, and as Thistle leveled up, I realized how awesome Source it is, and it's probably my favorite class druid. But as I sort of got like Tasha's Cauldron, I've been reading through, and I'm like, oh my god, there's some really super sick really awesome subclasses in here that I've just never seen. Like just today, I found one called a Wildfire Druid. Which are basically druids that acknowledge that destruction is an inevitable part of nature. So you have like a nature spirit who's adept at destruction as well as creative tendencies. So I thought that was such a fascinating thing as a druid to sort of play with, because druids are usually nature, yay, animals, Snow White sort of vibe. But this one was like destruction and equilibrium is like super cool.
Like
so
actual forces of nature as opposed to the cute cuddly critters in the forest.
Exactly. That's why I thought it was so interesting. But I just wanted to see what everyone else thought. If like anyone else played some really cool, fun, fresh, funky, weird subclasses that they want to like share.
All right, yeah, no, I've definitely got one. George knows this one, but let's start with him. George, what do you reckon? Subclasses.
Subclasses. Well, playing not against you, I guess against you, in Among Shadows and Stones. I played a Kobold Swarmkeeper Ranger. I guess that's where you're coming at.
Yeah, it was lit. I loved him.
But I think a lot of people just get wrapped up in, I wouldn't say the meta of D&D, but like in D&D you want to be an all-powerful hero. At least that's generally.
Sorry, that was me.
Oh, that's okay. Generally, how I see most people say it, but after a while, and it's happened to me, you just tend to get a bit bored of being the hero, and then you start looking in other avenues, whether you look into the alignments of being like a little bit more chaotic to the sort of evil spectrum side of things, or even just the bumbling idiot kobold that throws bees at people.
Yeah, look, when it comes to subclasses, I think you've got two schools of thought, and we've actually already sort of touched on the reason why some people, or a lot of people actually, might really dislike certain subclasses, but why a lot of us here will disagree with that is because we build personality first. Even Mark, his personality and mechanics sort of mixed together type of thing. So for us, there's really no bad subclass. We don't give a shit about mechanics. We don't care if our character, is overly successful, or at least that's how I feel. There might be some subclasses that if you dig into it, might not give you the depth of character that other classes might give. But for me personally, it's more about what kind of wild personality can I create around this character. And do you have a bit of a different idea about that, Lou?
Yeah, I'm thinking, for me, a subclass that does poorly is one that doesn't bring to the table an identity that separates itself. Something that's so generic, and therefore it doesn't get played because it's not powerful as well. But, you're a fighter, and your subclass is fighter. You're just going to fight. And you're like, there's not a lot of creativity there. I've really got to pull a lot to develop this character. The abilities don't reflect some of the things I'm thinking. Whereas if I played, say, Drunken Master, started doing Drunken Master, I'm having a great old time doing Drunken Master things. The character concept's coming out. Therefore I'm enjoying it more. But let's just say, even as good as it may be, it doesn't quite achieve what I want a Drunken Master to achieve. So I guess that's where another subclass might fall down. Examples? I don't sit there reading subclasses and analyzing them and figuring out which is, if I take 3 levels of this and 2 levels, I don't do that. So hard for me to say. I can say probably more what I see more of, but there's so many things that I only have like 5 players. That's a lot of subclasses I don't see every game.
Yep. Yeah, look, mechanically speaking, there are subclasses that just they way outshine other classes. So if that's what you're after, you can find that on the internet. Just Google it. Best subclasses in 5th edition D&D. You'll find list after list after list. So if you're looking for mechanically great ones, there are definitely ones. Druid, I found in the past, I was never interested in playing Druids. Now, after actually reading it and looking through what Druids can do, they're actually mechanically quite powerful. Yeah.
Oh, they were real badasses.
And yeah, even now, they're still quite powerful. You wild shape, you get an extra, pool of hit points. Circle of the Shepherd, like you said, Grace, you can wild shape into something that's a much higher class. At low levels, especially, that makes you incredibly powerful. It comes down a little bit as you go up in level, but especially in the beginning, Circle of the Shepherd Druid is, it's a very powerful subclass. But for me, like I said, it's more about what, it's the canvas upon which I paint my character. How rich is the canvas? Like, your subclass is sort of like the variety of paints that you can get to paint your character, sort of thing. You get different colors with different subclasses, so you can paint different characters. So for me, a subclass that is bad is or not as desirable is the one that gives you less colors to work with.
I agree.
That's a really weird,
definitely
intangible way of explaining it, but that's how I feel. But you are correct, especially when you're playing a long-form campaign. Even if it's a very interesting character, you are going to be doing a lot of combat, generally speaking, and skill checks and all that kind of stuff. If your character falls short mechanically, you might not enjoy playing it. I guess it depends on you know, who you are as a person and the group that you're playing with and all that kind of stuff. Grace, do you have anything more to add, or?
Really, I just sort of to read the room, I guess, and see what everyone's thoughts were. I mean, like, especially playing like a really little itty bitty one shot, there is so much you can do. Especially as Spen said, starting at like level 3 or level 6. Like one thing I found with Thistle, I know I keep bringing her up, but like, she sucks at melee. And so those first few levels are very dicey. And I found that reading through a lot of subclasses, there's a lot of subclasses that are like that. And so I just wanted to sort of vibe and see what everyone else was feeling.
Okay.
I think to add to that, having that flaw behind your character, even in the subclass, when something goes your way in something that, well, isn't that you're not really proficient in, it is just that much more satisfying when you rise above to that occasion. That's generally what my 2 cents is on that.
I guess it's very dependent on the game you're playing, on the group that you're with. That sort of that decides whether or not a subclass is particularly effective or fun to play or not. I guess is the sort of thing. If you're going to be doing a lot of combat, then some subclasses are going to be not as fun to play as others. If you're going to be doing a lot of role play, some subclasses are going to be a lot more fun than others. But I guess again it comes down to the creativity of the person and what they're comfortable doing and all that kind of stuff. Mark, what have you got for us?
Well, just on that before we move on, I coming from third ed mostly. It was all prestige classes back then. Yeah, like we didn't have subclasses. Yeah. And so like one of the things I like about the subclasses now is that like the prestige classes used to be, you'd have to dedicate like 10 levels of your character to take it. And there would be big sacrifices to doing that. Like you weren't going to get your full ramp of abilities from your base class. And it worked into the multi-classing system. So you had to be really careful about which ones of those you took. And good luck trying to convince your DM to play a Blackguard as a paladin in a good campaign, because you know, you were kind of alignment locked with a lot of things back then. You know, it was the option for a paladin to be able to do the Oathbreaker thing you can do now, but it was like it really had to kind of fit, at least with the people I was playing with, and you know that was a bit harder. But with the subclasses now, it's like everyone gets to choose one, and depending on what sources you have available, there's so much diversity. Like you can literally make a warlock or a wizard that can fight in melee if you choose the right subclass and build it right, you know, like if that's the kind of character you want, like a rough and tumble kind of wizard that's not afraid to get into a scrap and isn't going to die from 1d4 or anything. I'm sure you can find a way to do that with the right combination of subclasses and maybe a little bit of multi-class in there to get a bit of extra health, you know. So I really like that aspect about the subclasses. And I think, you know, if you're like pouring through the different ones, you can find some really good ones that don't get used that just work perfectly with your character. You know, they might not work in another situation, but maybe mechanically they lend just enough to give you something that would otherwise just be flavor that your character's doing. You've now got a mechanical thing behind it from that subclass.
Can I just, one takeaway I had from that, have I been pronouncing melee wrong?
No, I think people do it differently and it doesn't matter which one. I think it's kind of like tomato, bro.
So I don't look like an idiot while we're doing a live stream. Luke, is it melee or melee? Melee? How do you say?
I would say you enter melee. Although if you were to have a fight, you could refer to it as melee. So yes. Depending on the context of the sentence structure, I guess for me.
Okay, all right. Depends on the It's so I'm gonna get 50% of people sending me angry emails saying I don't know what I'm talking about.
Part of those angry 50%.
You're gonna be what do you think it's melee?
No, it's melee. I'm
melee.
Sorry.
Come on.
I agree.
I
it's
think
melee.
maybe it comes down to how much you lean towards the European side of your heritage, or you know, melee for me because I'm very posh. What can I say? I'm a posh citizen.
It just reminds me of like old-fashioned Yu-Gi-Oh. Oh, this is a really old one. Remember like the ones with the ripcords in it and the little what were they called? Beyblade?
Yeah.
Like,
I
remember
those.
Beyblades?
Are you
And
kidding
everyone
me
was
right
like,
now?
melee Beyblades.
My son still plays with those damn things. They're still around. They're not even that old.
Really?
I'm not even yes. I'm not even
Stop!
joking.
No, man,
He's got a couple.
they're old.
They're hidden somewhere in his big pile of garbage that he has. We got one room dedicated to the kids' garbage. They're hidden in there, but I shit you not, they were playing with Beyblades at the last party that we went to.
Oh, dear.
Pokemon is
Oh,
even still
alright.
there.
Yep.
Yeah,
I know
oh,
we're
he's showing
going a
my
little bit
age
off
here.
track.
Who remembers Tarzos?
Yep. We
Yes.
got a whole book. We were renovating my girlfriend's parents' place. She found a book of Tarzos, brought them home. We've actually been playing. You know,
Oh
how
my
you stack them
God.
up, and you get the big one, and you slam it on the little
Yeah.
ones. And we've been playing that, and my 3-year-old's got really bad aim, so there's Tarzos flying around all around the house. You really got to be switched on and get that head movement going because otherwise you get knocked out. But those, they love it.
I'm still waiting for the day my son goes, "Hey Dad, have you heard about Beyblades?" And I can bring out my big old dusty chest and say, "Son, let me tell you something."
Let me share my wealth of knowledge.
He'll love them for 3 days, throw them all around the house, and that'll be the end of it. Like kids do with every toy. Oh man, those beers are going down quite good. Anyway, does that pretty much give you a little bit of insight to subclasses, underused or underappreciated subclasses? I just realised I didn't say anything.
Go on then.
Come on.
Input would be appreciated.
When I was talking to you, George, about underappreciated, underused subclasses, Circle of Spores Druids. Come on, everyone.
Oh yeah.
Come on. Hulbeck Limrender, one of my favorite characters I've ever got to play. Absolutely brilliant. Love that character. It was the Circle of Spores Druid. People don't like that subclass. Don't know why. Because if you're creative, it gives you like just a whole palette of paint to paint with. And I really enjoyed it. And of course, part of the reason why it was so enjoyable to play is because, you know, I had such a good DM. That's part of it. So I guess it always comes down to the game that you're playing and who you're playing with. Yeah, so that's my input into subclasses. Let's move on to the next topic for tonight. And that is the one being brought to the table by this guy over here, Mark Hillman. What did you want to talk about tonight?
Sentient weapons.
Sentient
And items in general, but you know, the weapons are usually the fun ones.
It's been said that I walk a fine line between sentience and non-sentience, but I think I like to lean slightly towards sentience. I think I've got an intelligence modifier of maybe 2, 4, something like that.
Give yourself a bit more credit. You managed to run D&D. It's got to be at least 6.
Yeah, I managed a live stream, even though I screwed that up. So yeah, sentient weapons. Anything specifically about sentient weapons, or?
So like I've never used them as a player. I've only ever had like one of them in a campaign back in the day when I was a DM. So to the DMs, like, how do you go about using them in your campaigns if you do, without any spoilers or anything for those of us that might encounter such a thing in current campaigns? And also what maybe, like, if you're familiar with them, what your favorite sentient weapons might be, and from what editions, if they're from previous ones.
I've gone ahead and put a tag on my Dungeon Master's guide here on the sentient weapons. I'll just I'll give a quick readout of what's so. Some magic items possess sentience and personality. Such an item might be possessed, haunted by the spirit of a previous owner, or self-aware thanks to the magic used to create it. In any case, the item behaves like a character, complete with personality quirks, ideals, bonds, and sometimes flaws. A sentient item might be a cherished ally to its wielder or a continual thorn in the side. Most sentient items are weapons. Other kinds of items can manifest sentience, but consumable items such as potions and scrolls are never sentient. Sentient magic items function as NPCs under the DM's control. Any activated property of the item is under the item's control, not its wielder's. So that's interesting. As long as the wielder maintains a good relationship with the item, the wielder can access those properties normally. If the relationship is strained, the item can suppress its activated properties or even turn them against the wielder. So that's actually pretty interesting. Let's start with the DMs at the table. Let's roll a D4 or a D20. Luke, do you want odds or evens?
I'm odd.
You're odd? Okay, I'll agree. It's 7. You're up.
Ah, well, sentience. Unfortunately, I as DM get caught up with a lot of other things, and I do honestly find sentient weapons to be a secondary thought for myself in campaigns. I'm worried about other NPCs, I'm worried about combat scenarios, I'm not as worried about what your axe wants to whisper secrets to you but when I do remember to do it, like, you lay there at night, the axe whispers to you at night, telling you, to chop something or do something, but I only ever really have a basic character concept, and I don't spend enough time developing it. What I do like is potentially it would be a sentient weapon that another player plays the sentient weapon of another character, so that they have more interaction amongst themselves rather than trying to do it. Because a sword can just keep saying things to the other player, and that means you've got another player turning to them saying like, and they've got more time for creativity than I do, because my creativity's tied somewhere else, unfortunately.
That's
so
brilliant.
A player being the sentient of something else works better for me. Failing that, sentience such as Doctor Strange's Cloak of Levitation, where it doesn't talk, would save me some time as well. So I do love them. I think it's a big part of D&D that you don't get in other games and other things. So I'd love to include more, but I always find when it's me, or when it's on me as the DM, it's a second thought at best. So to hand that to another player, or look for someone who wants to and say, hey, who wants to play a malevolent or an overly pleasant or something else?
Strangely sexual.
Yeah, wants to constantly be sheathed, sort of weapon. Leave that to the players and let them have more fun, because they'll have a lot more fun and give you time as a DM to figure out what's coming up next.
Can I to everyone at the table actually, building on the note that I read before. So, any activated property of the item is under the item's control, not its wielder. Then it says it can suppress its activated properties or even turn them against the wielder. First page I turned to was a sentient weapon called the Black Razor. Now, the Black Razor has the Devour Soul ability. Whenever you use it to reduce a creature to 0 hit points, the sword slays the creature and devours its soul. As a DM, Luke, would you allow that sword to devour the soul of its wielder if they were reduced to 0 hit points during combat?
Yeah. I'd probably have a talk to the PC, the player ahead of time and say, listen, do you understand this is what you got? Just so they can get involved in the storyline of it as well. And if they don't wish it, well, then maybe suggest, hey, this might not be the weapon for you, or maybe we delete that function or whatever. If you're not interested, I'm interested in building a story, not wrecking one.
I think that's cool. Oh, go on.
I'm big on telling my players what's coming up, what they're doing, what they're about to come into, so that they can help tell the story. They can think ahead. Like so many times I read on Reddit DMs, I go, I'm going to surprise my players and they're going to be in Curse of Strahd, and you're like, don't do that. Just tell them, or you're going to muck people around if that's not what they're planning. But sentient weapons and soul stealing, I mean, for example, you guys had the chance to lose your lives in Curse of Strahd, but I won't spoil too much for people, but
not my fault.
There's places you can go, you can have your soul stolen just by touching something, and I'm just like, whoa, that's probably not what I want to achieve after this. I'll probably lean away from that. But also, I don't like things like petrification in a fight, because who wants to sit there and not play the game?
I've got to say, the incident that you're referring to, totally not my fault. Didn't happen because of me. Wasn't me. So don't even suggest it. I didn't do it. It was someone.
Sure.
You're part of the group just as they were heading there, actually. Honestly.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool.
Some time ago, I was heading up.
It's not the one that I was thinking about then. All right. So it wasn't my fault. Sweet. I didn't
with the
infer myself.
I was just gonna say with the soul stealing thing, like I think that's like, you're right there. Like if the player's cool to go with it, then cool. But I think as well it gives you an opportunity to, depending on what else is going on in the campaign, if they get their soul stolen, maybe they have a little side experience of what it's like to be inside the sword, while the party has to try and get them the hell out somehow. It might be a nice little side quest or something that could be thrown in somewhere if you're in an open form kind of campaign or something, not trying to, do a specific storyline.
Spoilers for 4th edition. Kellamvor in the God's Bane, who was Mask. Yeah, but get that, don't worry about it.
All right. So I think the major takeaway for Luke is it's difficult to keep track of sentient weapons. Yeah?
I'd rather give players and let them have fun with it.
Yeah, okay. I'll keep that in mind. If I ever play one of your games, I'll definitely putting my hand up to play someone's weirdly suggestive sentient weapon. Next team at the table, I'm going to need to go deal with something, so I'm going to hand it over... I'm going to hand it over to you, Mark. Why don't you take over for a second? I'll be right back.
Yep, cool as. All right, well... does anyone else have any thoughts on those?
On sentient weapons?
Yes. You both do.
Yeah, I do. Look, I understand the whole soul stealing thing. Okay, that's probably the big extreme side of things. And again, that's why you go through session 0 and say, hey, look, this is what this campaign is, and etc. etc. If you warn players out ahead of time and say, hey, look, there could be some things that could be very detrimental to your character, but it could progress into greater things, then yeah, and if the player actually has a problem with it, then you just have a discussion with them. Understand it is a role-playing game, but especially in the group, one of my groups that I'm with, we're very adult about it, and we've had moments. I've had moments where I said, "Hey, that's kind of not cool," and he said, "Oh, okay. Look, all right, I'll fix it. We'll fix it together. What do you suggest?" On the other side of the coin, where you said, "Where do sentient weapons take place in the story?" As in, are they an NPC? I'll treat them as an NPC. But if you say like, oh, "Okay." When will they be talking to you? Will they be talking to you constantly? I have the sheath unsheath rule. As long as they're sheathed, they remain quiet. That's their little home.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. And I'm back. And the problem that I needed to deal with was go get another beer. So where did we land? George, how do you feel about sentient weapons? I caught the last little bit of that. Something about when they're sheathed, they're not sentient, or
yeah. Generally speaking, I can make a sentient weapon as annoying or as cursed. I actually did recently a cursed short sword for somebody, and they, despite what happened to them, they absolutely loved it. Just the fact that they went, oh crap, now I've got to deal with this. Again, that's just talking to your DM and having that session 0, and if you have a problem, talking to your DM further about that sort of stuff. But I think we pressed a bit on that, at least on my end. But yeah, that's what I think. Sentient weapons are pretty cool in my opinion.
All right, I'll throw in my 2 cents about sentient weapons then. Sentient weapons, I've got to agree a bit with you, Luke. I think I haven't actually had to run a sentient weapon before. I think your comment about being difficult to track, I think that's going to be pretty dead on the money. Maybe when they pick up the weapon, you're going to be like, yes, this is sweet, this is a sentient weapon. But when you're, 2-3 sessions down the line, if you're doing sessions every fortnight, it could be something that sort of falls behind the way, like on the side of the road, as it were, because NPCs are important. They're the part of the gameplay that sort of moves the story from point A to point B, as it were. But sentient weapons, on the other hand, for the most part, I know Baldur's Gate is a little bit different. The sentient, item that you find in that sort of pushes you, is sort of designed to push you in a certain direction, sort of thing. But for the most part, sentient weapons don't find themselves a great deal as a central point of a narrative. So I would suggest, if you're going to use a sentient weapon in a campaign, especially if it's a homebrew campaign, make the sentient weapon a focal point of your campaign, if that makes sense. Find this, the Sword of Radiance, bird watching, or whatever it is. That's the first thing that came up with, by the way. Sword of Radiant bird watching. And make the story revolve around that. It could be something that you actually add into the content that you're writing, Luke. A story that revolves around a sentient weapon. I think that's probably a better way, as opposed to just chucking a sentient weapon at characters, because if it's not important, then it's something that's sort of going to fall by the wayside, and that would be a shame, because there are, situations or ways that you can engage with a sentient weapon that could be extremely interesting and fun. You could really
I definitely agree.
troll
the one.
your players.
The singing sword. Go for it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, the singing sword's good. The one time I did introduce one into a campaign, it was a set piece, and it was later in the campaign, and it was kind of like, right, you need to get this thing to deal with the bad guy, but there's an equally good chance it's going to corrupt you, and you're going to end up serving them, and it made for an interesting little bit of thing, and there was a little bit of infighting amongst the party as to who was going to take it, and that kind of thing. So it's when they're used as part of the story to drive it forward and interject things like that, I think that's the best use of them. I love the idea of adding, having a player play them, though, if you want to really get in depth with the RP. But I think that's great.
Yeah, I think especially if it's not a sentient weapon that forms a particular central part of the campaign, if you get another one of the players to play the sentient weapon, that's actually a really good idea. But you got to make sure that your players are mature enough that they're not going to use that to really mess with someone else's character or something like that. So you got to make sure that the people that you're playing with are the people that you trust. If that makes sense. For instance, I wouldn't give me, control over someone's sentient weapon. I would be whispering to people at night, touch me, stab your friend, something like that. Just really, really, really trolling people. That sort of that brings us to the end of our topics. Does anyone have anything else that they wanted to throw?
I did want to touch on my one thing, and Grace hasn't spoken about the sentient weapons yet, so I can let her go. And then I've got a particular sentient weapon I want to talk about once she's done with that.
All right, Grace, you're up.
So obviously I'm not a DM like everyone else here. So I've never really run a sentient weapon.
No,
but
we
I
need
am
a player's perspective too.
Podcast listener. Oh, exactly. I'm a big podcast listener, and I was discussing with the guys before about Dungeons and Daddies, my favorite podcast. The only experience I've had with a sentient weapon is the sword. I can never remember its name, but every single time you draw the sword, as you go to attack someone, it contemplates what you're about to do. So you have to convince the sword that murder is okay. And every single time you bring the sword out, it has a philosophical debate with you about whether or not murder is okay, and you have to convince this sword that murder is fine, which I think is so interesting. And it was really Ron Stampler, the emotionally detached stepfather, was such a good character to give that to, because he is just really just like a cute little puppy dog, and it's like giving a puppy dog a very sharp blade, and the blade doing most of the work, but also the character. So I just thought that was so interesting. But yeah, I've obviously not a DM, so I don't really you know, I've never run anything like that, but I can understand how, from a DM's perspective, it would get really difficult to keep track of that stuff. I mean, I'm still really, really new to Dungeons and Dragons, and just seeing all the DMs I've worked with, like, plodding away behind their little screens, trying to figure out what's going on, and, like, there's so much to keep track of, so I could totally understand how it would all just fall away a little bit and become a little bit of a forgotten sort of element.
Yeah, okay. Because I watch Dungeons and Daddies quite religiously, I can help with that. So that sword in particular. So whenever it's drawn, that's when its sort of sentient properties become a thing. Because it's a comedy podcast. For those who haven't really listened, it just sort of adds that extra tier to the sort of to the comedy. If you fail, the sword just goes no, and you're like, oh well, I just got to fight this this aberration or something. Oh, that's not good. But on we'll go on the other side of the spectrum. Have you seen Darkest Dice?
No, can't say I have.
No, I
No.
haven't.
So they do come across a sentient sword, and it leads to a very big consequence. This sentient sword was only available for one session, but the consequence was big. Again, it depends on the campaign setting. If it's and what DM is really trying to prove, that session 0. I know I stress about session 0, but session 0 is second, or if not before, king to RP.
Yeah, and that's a good segue, guys. Session 0 of Out of the Abyss is available to watch on YouTube and available to listen to on Spotify. So check that out. Just
Yay!
search Crit and Miss, and you'll find that. But what you're saying is it actually, well, for instance, the sentient sword in Dungeons and Dragons, the sword that you're talking about. I haven't listened to that much of that podcast. I haven't gotten up to that particular part yet. That actually, even though it is a comedy podcast and sometimes they play a little bit loose with the rules, what we talked about earlier, that actually fits perfectly with the rules as written in the Dungeon Master's Guide. You have to, the sentient weapon has to sort of agree with you in order for its properties to work. So even though it is a comedy podcast, it still actually is abiding by the rules of D&D, which I think is an interesting point.
Yeah.
Definitely.
How it's written. I know they a lot of the times they play very loose with the rules and that kind of stuff just to make things more interesting. But yeah.
I do not play by the rules. They are the quote unquote bad boys of D&D.
Yeah, and look, they're not the only ones. There's a lot of podcasts out there that play fast and loose with the rules. I know the Adventure Zone is one of those podcasts that plays a little bit fast and loose with the rules sometimes, but it can make things more interesting, more entertaining for people.
Well, the way I look at it, like, playing fast and loose with the rules is kind of playing by the golden rule, right?
Yeah, that's what I find too. I don't play or 100%. Rules as written either, and I think for me, like, I know some people really love playing rules as written, but for me it's not my kind of thing. I make things up as I go along. If you I was going to say if you catched, yeah, it's good English. If you caught episode 1 of Out of the Abyss, for instance, I've borrowed a rule from a different gaming system that is adding complications to failed skill checks and that kind of stuff. That's not part of D&D rules as written, but you know, it makes it more entertaining. So
It's a good feature.
yeah, that's
Absolutely.
good. It's fun. Do you do something as well like that, Luke? Do you add complications to failed skill checks or whatever?
Yeah, classically I do things on ones, such as they go to swing and it gets lodged in the roof, and they've got to then try and unlodge the weapon from the roof, or you shoot into combat. Third ed, well, you used to suffer a -4 penalty shooting into combat and things like that, but you're shooting into combats, and third ed was non-stop hitting your friends in the back with
It's my kind of game.
with arrows and bolts and magic, and having people just turn on everyone else in the game like, stop it! You're hitting us! So I used to do a lot of that. I recently have been trying to stick to 5th ed and taking on the mindset of everything's simple. We don't overcomplicate 5th ed. Coming from 3rd ed, it is a great relief. I've ran high level 20, 21 encounters for 3rd ed, and you're just like, I got a page and a half stat block here, and I don't know half these spells.
Plus this, minus that, plus this, and then don't forget you need to roll that again if you do it this way. And
yes, I do like 5th ed and would recommend for high level stuff. Yeah, 5th ed might be the go. But I definitely used to in 3rd ed. It was always there. You rolled a 1, something bad happened in some way that generally was more entertaining than anything.
Yeah, so the system that I've introduced, for instance, as an example of how that works, someone was trying to pick a lock with no spoilers here, but there are spoilers, so close your ears. Be spoiled on the Out of the Abyss campaign. Someone was trying to pick a lock with I think it was a broken shaft of an arrow, and the head of a crossbow bolt. They're trying to pick a lock with that. They rolled a 2 on their sleight of hands because they were rolling with disadvantage because their hands were shackled. A complication from that was the head of the crossbow bolt's now stuck in the lock. Next time your jailer's going to come along, you're going to see a crossbow bolt stuck in the lock. So how's that going to play out? I guess you're going to have to join us for episode 2 of this. Look at me, I'm finding ways to plug my own stream at every available opportunity.
Spill the beans, DM. I want to know.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what.
If you haven't seen episode 1 yet, it is on YouTube and Spotify.
It is on YouTube and Spotify.
100%.
Check that out. If you want to find out what happens ahead of time, you're going to have to leave a $3 donation on Ko-Fi, and I might give you a little spoiler. As I said.
Hey, can us players get those as well, or are we banned?
Yeah, if I donate $6, can Thrash get out of potential death?
I'll think about it.
D&D with deals.
Yeah, right.
That's what it's all about.
D&D deals.
Just before we break up, I did want to talk about this one particular sentient weapon. This is the one that I used. Was the Sword of Cass. I'm sure it's quite famous and everyone knows it. If you're familiar with these kinds of things, this thing has a very long history in Dungeons and Dragons. It's been around since the original edition. Back then it was a short sword, but it was the first weapon in Dungeons and Dragons to have a +6 modifier.
Whoa!
Yeah, and even up until in 3rd, let me just double check my notes here. Wrong page. I think it's that one.
Look at this.
Even up
got
until
notes and everything.
Yeah, even up until 3rd ed, it was in 3rd ed, which is the one I used it in. It was a +6 unholy keen Vorpal longsword that also granted +10 strength.
6.
Wow.
Jesus.
Yeah, so it did extra damage to I can't remember how unholy, but it got extra damage to something. Keen meant it would crit on a 19 or a 20, or like it expanded the critical range. If you combined that with improved critical, and like longswords already critted on a 19 to 20, you could crit on like a 17 or a 16. You still have to confirm crit like you did in 3rd ed, so you'd roll 16 to 20, whatever it was, then you'd have to roll to hit again. But then that was that, and then Vorpal, if you crit and this thing had a head, you took it off and the thing died.
God, that is insane. I've heard of Vorpal blades, but that is crazy.
It was brutal. You could one-shot a Tarask with it, or a dragon, if you were lucky.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was nuts, but it was inherently evil. It was created by Vecna for his chief lieutenant, Cass, who ended up turning against him, and that's the whole part of the story of the thing. So its main purpose is to kill Vecna. And like, and when you get down into 5th ed, it's not as strong as it used to be. Like now it's +3 longsword, you crit on a 19 to 20, and you do an extra 2d10 damage to undead. You get 2 random properties, 2 random drawbacks.
Couple spells.
Yeah, you get Cool Lightning, Divine Word, and Finger of Death. Back in the day, it was called, like 3rd ed was Cool Lightning, Blasphemy, Unhallow, and Slay Living, which I think is kind of equivalent to Finger of Death. And then also you've got in the 5th ed D10 to your initiative roll instead of the +10 strength thing going on. But then you can also put your attack bonus towards AC, which is like a tweak of the old defender ability, which it used to have in 1st ed. But in 5th, like every time you draw it, you've got to draw blood in that first round. Otherwise, you will turn it on yourself.
It's like a Chris knife.
Holy hell.
From Dune.
Yeah.
If you draw it,
Like,
you got to
it's
draw blood.
nasty. And, you know, inherently good for campaigns where dead, if you're facing vampires, for instance, things like that. They're pretty useful. But also 3rd ed vampires were way more brutal than 5th, but that's a story for another time.
Story for another time. Write that down.
Yes.
That'll be a topic for the next episode of Critical.
Yeah, 3rd ed template rules, man. You could do some crazy stuff with characters. I had a DM NPC in this campaign that was kind of the one that was trying to get his hands on the Sword of Cast, but the party was trying to keep it away from him. And he was a drow fighter rogue that was also a vampire. And so you take the drow stats, which are already pretty good in 3rd ed, and then add the vampire template onto it. And that's kind of how vampires, half dragons, all that kind of stuff worked. You would just slap that onto an existing racial profile, and it was like crazy stat boost. Like I think the vampire template gave you like +8 strength and +6 dex or something, and a huge charisma boost, but you had 0 con
But
because you were dead.
Undead don't have
Obviously,
con.
negs
Yeah.
for daylight, stuff like that, right?
Hey, yes,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Drow don't go out in the daylight anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
neither do I work in a workshop, and then sometimes on Saturday nights I work indoors at night time.
Yeah, and you know, if a drow's really got to go outside, they can cast darkness at will.
Does that have a number of casts or?
I think like 3 times a day in 3rd.
Yeah, that could get you to the bottle shop and back again.
Yeah, easy.
That's pretty much all we have time for tonight on tonight's episode of Critical Conversations. Before we finish up, I want to thank first and foremost my guests tonight, Mark Hillman from Mark Hillman Music. Check him out here on Twitch. And on Facebook and all those.
Yeah, my Twitch channel's basically empty, so check the Facebook and keep an eye out on the Twitch. I'll be doing stuff soon.
And I actually need to have a conversation with you about that, because I'm going to host your first Twitch stream or your second Twitch stream, depending on what it is. I'm going to host it, so you can check it out on my channel as well. I want to say a huge thank you to Grace as well for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you on board with this and all of the games. You're you know, always you know, you bring the RP, and what more could a DM want than someone who always brings the that awesome role playing. Thank you to Luke Archard from Big Games Small Pieces. Guys, if you want to see more videos, they do reviews. What else? What other kind of videos do you have on your YouTube channel?
Retelling videos, reviews, box openings, a number of different things. We're trying to figure out exactly what people want so we can give it to you. So let me know what you want and I'll try and give it to you.
Tell you what I want. I want more Big Game Small Pieces. That's what I want. Also, thank you to George from the Dungeonroos. Unfortunately, he couldn't join us with video, but we had the absolute pleasure of having him join us by voice channel tonight. Thank you, George. Tell us about the Dungeonroos. Where can we find you?
Yeah. You can find us on the Dungeonroos Presents The Wild Beyond the Witchlight podcast on Spotify. Alternately, you can find us on Facebook with the same name. I am very happy that I've joined you tonight, Sven. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much. And if you have any troubles finding them, of course, you can find links on our Facebook channel.
I'm just digging up the links now to drop in the chat.
Yep. Mark will drop those in the chat for you guys. I could probably actually find those really quickly.
I've already got them. There's Big Game Small Pieces there, and
Stop it! You make me look bad.
Dungeonroos. I was just you're busy hosting. I was just getting ahead of it.
Of course, no, you're Great, thank you very much for doing that. Of course, I have some shout outs I gotta make before we finish the night. I want to say, shout out to Othic Gaming, who I run Baldur's Gate Descent to Avernus with Ando, Westy, Barry, Lisa, the whole crew. That's a lot of fun. We're going to be doing that tomorrow night, so you got to join us for that. So that's just Othic Gaming. Just search that on Twitch. Easy to find. I want to say a big shout out to Froth's Minis for their supporters of the Twitch channel. They sent a few minis that I could give away as part.
Yeah, aren't we running a giveaway with one of their minis with Out of the Abyss?
We absolutely are. No one entered on episode 1. We're going to run it again for episode 2 of Out of the Abyss. If you want a chance to win a mini from Froth Minis, where have I put him? He's here somewhere.
If I enter, I like those odds.
Exactly. Enter, you could win. There's a Mind Flayer mini that's up for grabs as well.
It's pretty cool. There's a pic on our Facebook.
Yeah, the pictures on Facebook. There's a class as well, which is actually would be perfect for you. It's a Dungeon Master is engraved on it. So I wanted to say a shout out to the guys at. I've forgotten what it was again. There's so many names that I have to remember that I've forgotten one of them. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to look it up. I do have a list, but I didn't have it open. Smoldering Designs on Etsy. Benjamin Spyerson designed those. I can actually probably grab that, show it to you guys. I have it right here. Oh, there's the mini as well. I have it all packed up and ready to go in case someone want it. Check that out. It's hard to see in the lighting. It's pretty big too, actually.
Yeah.
So you can get a good pint out of that. That's up for grabs as well. If you want to win those things, guys, join us for episode 2 of Out of the Abyss on the 1st. I think it's 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, and chuck a message in the chat with hashtag Out of the Abyss, and you'll go into the draw to win those. I want to say a big thank you to the guys at Above VTT. They are the virtual tabletop that we use for all of our streams. They do that, completely for free, but they do have a fundraising. I can't remember which one it was. Patreon, that's the one. They have a Patreon, so if you want to support them, head over to Patreon and support them as well. I want to say a huge thank you to Gus Honeychurch, who made the soundtrack for Out of the Abyss for us. Thank you to Valiant Odyssey, who joined us tonight. Big Game Small Pieces, obviously. Luke, the Dungeonroos, George, and of course, I want to say a huge thank you to friends of the show, Chris and family from Hermes D&D Services down in Brisbane. Now, after every live stream, I love to do a little sign off. I threw it out there to see if there's anyone else here wanting to do a little sign off message. Is there anyone interested? No? Yes? No?
You're wrong with it, mate.
All right. Look, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. We were talking about sentient weapons earlier. I'm going to start talking about sentient creatures. Pets. I know it's a bit of a weird subject to touch upon on a D&D podcast, but you can get pets in D&D. You can roll animal handling and get a sweet animal companion.
Yeah, familiar.
Look, pets are part of the family. And if you're not prepared to treat your pet as part of your family, then maybe pets aren't for you. They're not something that you get and a few months later, get rid of because they're no longer convenient for your life. So if you're thinking about getting a pet, whether it be for yourself or for a gift for someone else, do try and keep in mind that a pet is a lifelong commitment. All right? Every year, around about 200,000 dogs and cats get euthanized in Australia alone. All right, that's a lot of animals getting euthanized. So if you are thinking about getting a pet and you've thought about it and you've decided, yes, I can afford to make this commitment to an animal, consider adopting an animal as opposed to buying an animal for a breeder or something like that, because we want to save some poor little kitties and some poor little doggies, and you might even save yourself a couple of bucks adopting an animal. So it's a win-win situation.
We have a rescue here, and we've had her for a few years now, and she's a bit crazy sometimes, but the most beautiful dog we've ever had.
Yep, and I've got to add to that. I've got 3 cats. I've got 1 dog. They were all adopted. My cat, my favorite cat. The other cats hear me say this, but my favorite cat, Katana. I went to a house, right, and as soon as I got there was just junk everywhere. Empty milk cartons. A little kid answered the door with his nappy full of, poo down around his knees. I turned to my partner and I said, I don't care what this cat looks like. I'm getting it out of here. I'm taking it with me. You know what I mean?
At least you could get the cat out of there.
And I did. And she has stuck by my side. If ever I'm feeling upset or, depressed, I suffer from depression. It happens. She's right there by my side at all times. So adopt, guys, rather than buy.
100%.
Adopt. I know kittens and puppies are very cute and all that kind of stuff, but please help out those poor animals, that are stuck in horrible situations and are going to get euthanized.
And just on that too, if you find it a struggle in the first little while, don't give up, because you don't know where they've come from, what they've gone through, and often their behavior, if they're acting out, can be from their trauma, and all you need to do is give them that loving space and show them that they're okay, that that's not going to happen to them again, and they will come around.
Yep.
I used to volunteer for... Sorry.
No, you're right, go.
I used to volunteer for one of the animal rescue places in our city, and it was just the most rewarding experience because these dogs really just want some love. And, I always find it so nice to adopt an older dog. They just want a nice little place to retire and have a little life of their own. So I agree with you, Sven. Definitely adopt, not shop. There's some lovely dogs and kitties out there that just want and need love.
Yeah. Our girl here too, it was sad. She was not unloved. She was a family dog, but always an outside dog, and she had a little mate. So there were 2 dogs in the family, and they both got out together. And the family could only afford to get one of them out of the pound, and so they took the other one. And so it was a combination of separation anxiety from family, but also from her best mate. She doesn't like it when we leave the house, unless we take her with us. But otherwise, she still has the occasional moment of losing it. But she didn't even know what a pat was before. She was an outdoor dog, so she didn't really get a lot of that kind of thing. And, she had no concept of even getting on the furniture. It's still a struggle to get her up onto the bed to chill out with you or something. But, over time, they warm to it, and it's she's so much better now. And she actually, listens and connects with you and, doesn't do what you tell her. But I think that's just her personality.
That's exactly right. Personality, that's what you want. What you want in an animal. If you have an animal without personality, then it's not really, what's the fun in that? You want personality. So guys, if you're considering getting an animal, adopt, don't buy. Look after your animal companions, guys. I was just looking up the page for animal companions. And other than that, thank you for joining us. I hope you have a very good night, and thank you all. And we'll see you for the next episode of Crew Conversations.
Thanks for having us, Sven.
Gotcha, man.
Thank